Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a vast, sunlit field. The air is quiet but alive, and beneath the surface of the earth lies something priceless, pearls of a beauty beyond description. You can sense them, though they're not yet in your hand. They seem to call to you, not with words, but with a resonance that touches the deepest part of your being. This is the field of pearls. And as Emmet Fox once taught, it is not an outer location of not a distant land. It is the landscape of your own consciousness. The pearls are the treasures of spiritual awareness, the unshakable wealth that is found only within. So before we journey inward, I invite you to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with your soul. From the moment you step into this metaphorical field, you are making a quiet but profound agreement with yourself. You will learn to see beyond the surface of things. The grass may look ordinary, the soil may seem unremarkable, yet you know through an inner certainty that something of infinite value is hidden here. That certainty is the first pearl you discover, even before you dig. It is the pearl of recognition. Without it, the field is just another patch of earth. With it, the field becomes the gateway to the life you have been seeking. You are not here by accident. Something in you has been asking, perhaps for years, is there more than what I see? You may have tasted achievements, collected possessions, and still felt an emptiness in the quiet hours. You may have searched in books, in conversations, in late-night walks, and realized that the outer world can offer many things but never quite deliver the sense of completeness you long for. This is why the image of the field of pearls holds power. It shifts your attention from chasing outer answers to exploring the soil of your own mind and heart. As you begin walking, the field stretches out in all directions. It is neither threatening nor urgent. The pace here is not the frantic race of the world. It is the slow, deliberate rhythm of discovery. Each step feels like a choice. Will you tread lightly, glancing around but not engaging deeply? Or will you kneel down, touch the earth, and let your hands grow familiar with the texture of what lies beneath? The decision matters, for the pearls do not rise to the surface for the casual passerby. They reveal themselves to the one who is willing to be still, attentive, and persistent. The beauty of this field is that it responds to the quality of your awareness. In ordinary life, you might think the world is indifferent, that opportunities appear and vanish without rhyme or reason. But here, in the field of pearls, you begin to sense that the treasure is not random, it is in direct relationship to your inner state. When you bring presence, patience, and openness, the ground seems to soften. You notice subtle glints in the soil, tiny hints that something luminous lies just below. This is not superstition, it is the way consciousness works. The moment you become available to deeper truth, you start to see its traces everywhere. At first, you might find only small fragments, pearls, still coated in clay, rough to the touch. Don't dismiss them. Every fragment carries the same essence as the flawless pearl. It simply needs time and care to reveal its brilliance. The early pearls you find might be moments of clarity in your day, sudden compassion for someone who once irritated you, or an hour spent free from the usual swirl of anxious thought. These are not small things. They are the proof that you are digging in the right place. Emmet Fox spoke often of the power of consciousness, of the way your thought shapes your experience. In the field of pearls, this teaching becomes more than an idea, it becomes your lived reality. You begin to see that your awareness is not just a lens for viewing the world, it is the very soil in which the pearls grow. What you plant there, what you allow to take root, will determine the quality of your treasure. Fear and resentment make the soil hard and unyielding. Gratitude and curiosity keep it rich and fertile. As the sun shifts overhead, you notice that your perception of the field is changing. The same stretch of ground that seemed plain before now feels alive with possibility. This is the subtle magic of the work. You are not adding something foreign to your life. You are uncovering what has always been there. The pearls were never absent. They were simply hidden beneath layers of neglect, doubt, and distraction. And as each layer is brushed away, you begin to sense the contours of your true inheritance, an unbroken connection to the source that gives life to all. You sense it more clearly now, not as a prize to be taken, but as a living presence beneath your feet and within your chest. Its glow is subtle yet persistent, drawing you deeper into the field. The soil feels warmer, more responsive, as if it knows you have chosen to stay. Without forcing, without rushing, you keep your hands moving, uncovering textures that tell you you're close. And in this quiet labor, a realization emerges. The treasure is not somewhere ahead. It is already here, woven into the awareness with which you touch each moment. As this dawns, the shape of the pearl itself begins to reveal its true meaning. The pearl is not a jewel of the sea in this vision. It is not shaped by shells or waves, but by the deep currents of thought and feeling that flow through your inner world. In its purest form, the pearl is consciousness itself, clear, radiant, and whole. It doesn't have to be fabricated or imported from anywhere else. It is already complete, already luminous. What clouds it is not a lack of worth, but the sediment of habits, fears, and misperceptions that have settled over time. You begin to notice how this pearl-like awareness differs from the mind you've known in daily life. Ordinary thought often jumps from one concern to the next, chasing tasks, memories, and expectations. It is restless, scanning for problems to solve or roles to perform. But the pearl is stillness at the center of motion. It can move with life's events without being fractured by them. Its clarity does not depend on everything going smoothly. It shines, even when the world appears unsettled. When you hold the image of the pearl within, you are not imagining an object you must find elsewhere. You are recalling the quality of awareness that is natural to you before the noise sets in. Think of it as sunlight diffused through clear water. Everything in its path is illuminated without effort. This is what makes the pearl so valuable. It transforms whatever it touches, not by force but by presence. When you see life through this awareness, you respond with wisdom rather than react with impulse. There is a certain humility that comes with recognizing the pearl as consciousness. It reminds you that the treasure was never a trophy to earn through struggle. It was the condition of your being all along. Yet humility here is not weakness. It is the steady acknowledgement that you are part of something vast, that the clarity in you is the same clarity that animates the whole of creation. The pearl holds this truth silently, without argument, without needing to prove itself. As you attune to this quality, you might begin to sense where it has been overlooked. You recall moments when a calm insight guided you before you even knew you needed it, how you suddenly saw a solution to a long-standing difficulty, or how an old resentment simply melted away without dramatic confrontation. These are glimpses of the pearl breaking through, moments when the sediment shifted just enough to let the light out. They are signs that this awareness is not a rare visitor, but a resident presence, waiting for you to notice. It's easy to mistake the pearl for a mood or a fleeting state of mind, but it is deeper than that. Moods come and go with the weather of circumstance. The pearl remains constant beneath them. Imagine a lake whose surface changes with wind and rain, while its depths remain still and clear. That depth is where the pearl abides. And as you learn to live from that depth, you begin to see how surface disturbances lose their power to define you. This recognition changes your relationship with effort. Instead of trying to manufacture calm or construct wisdom, you practice uncovering what is already there. Each moment of attention is like rinsing away another layer of silt. The more you rinse, the more the pearl's light becomes your natural reference point. And this is where the law of mind begins to reveal its subtlety. What you hold at the center of your attention shapes the texture of your life. If you keep the pearl in focus, not as an idol, but as a living truth, you will find that your outer experiences begin to reflect its clarity. In quiet moments, you might even feel that the pearl is looking back at you, not as a separate entity, but as the most intimate part of yourself. It sees without judgment, without preference. It knows the shape of your joys and your struggles, yet it remains unchanged by them. This constancy is its gift, offering you a place to stand when the shifting tides of thought and circumstance try to sweep you away. And here, as you lean more fully into this awareness, something begins to happen without any command from you. The pearl's light starts to filter into the way you see others. You notice that even in those whose behavior you find challenging, there is a similar depth, a similar radiance hidden beneath their own sediment. This recognition doesn't excuse harmful actions, but it changes the lens through which you interpret them. You stop relating to people solely as the surface roles they play, and start sensing the shared essence beneath. This shift is not theoretical. It touches the way you speak, the way you listen, and even the way you walk through a crowded street. You are no longer scanning for threats or measuring worth against appearances. You are moving through the world with the quiet assurance that the treasure within you is mirrored in every life you encounter, whether or not it has yet been uncovered. Such awareness doesn't make you passive. On the contrary, it sharpens your capacity to act where action is needed, but without the haze of reactivity. You respond from clarity, and clarity tends to produce actions that are precise, kind, and effective. This is the beginning of what it means to live as the pearl, to let consciousness itself be the guiding intelligence of your days. There is no ceremony marking this stage. You may not even notice the exact moment it happens. But one day, as you move through your life, you realize you are no longer searching for the pearl as if it were elsewhere. You are carrying it with you. And because of that, each encounter, each challenge, and each quiet hour becomes another facet through which its light can shine. Without pause, this understanding begins to guide you toward recognizing the seeker who first set foot in this field. You begin to notice that the seeker in this story is not some distant figure from a parable, it is you. The merchant of the old image is not a literal trader walking through markets. It is the part of you that moves through life, searching for value. You have wandered through countless stalls, ambitions, relationships, possessions, achievements. Some have given joy for a while, others have left you emptier than before. Yet through it all, there has been a deeper current, an unspoken yearning to find something that doesn't fade when circumstances shift. That current has brought you here. The merchant within you is wise in its own way. It knows that certain things, no matter how glittering, will not last. It can recognize when you are settling for substitutes, ideas, and objects that imitate the shine of the pearl but cannot match its depth. This recognition is not always comfortable. It can make the ordinary patterns of life feel insufficient, even hollow. But it is precisely this dissatisfaction that drives the merchant onward toward what is real. At times, this inner seeker has been quiet, drowned out by the noise of survival and expectation. You may have gone months or years without feeling its pull clearly, yet it never disappears. Even in the busiest seasons, in the most distracted moments, there are flashes, a sudden pause in thought, a glimpse of beauty, a moment of compassion that remind you of something more. These are the merchant signs, pointing you toward the field where the true treasure lies. The merchant within is not reckless, but it is willing to risk. It is willing to give up the familiar comforts of the market, the predictable routines, the reassurance of fitting in for the chance to find something greater. This is not a sacrifice in the painful sense. It is a reallocation of attention. You are not losing anything essential by leaving the stalls behind. You are freeing yourself from distractions so you can focus on what matters. There is a quiet courage in this choice. Walking away from the market means others may not understand your direction. They may question why you would turn from the usual pursuits, why you would step off the path that seems to work for everyone else. But the merchant within is not swayed by appearances. It trusts the whisper more than the shout. It senses that true wealth does not depend on collective approval. As you listen to this part of yourself, you start to see how the merchant's discernment works in daily life. It notices when conversations drift into gossip that leaves you feeling heavy. It notices when work consumes your attention without feeding your soul. It notices when pleasures that once felt satisfying now leave a hollow aftertaste. And each time, it asks without words whether your energy could be better spent elsewhere. This constant, quiet questioning is how the merchant navigates toward the pearl. What makes this merchant unique is that it is not searching for novelty. It is searching for authenticity. It is not chasing the next thrill, but seeking the depth that can only be found in what is timeless. That is why, when it catches even a faint glimmer of the pearl, it knows immediately, this is it. There is no mistaking the light of the real thing. And yet, the merchant also knows that recognizing the treasure is only the first step. The next step is willingness. Willingness to release everything that no longer serves, to let go of the old currency of distraction and exchange it for the unshakable value of inner clarity. This willingness is not a single dramatic decision. It is a practice, renewed in each choice you make. Every time you turn your attention toward the pearl, instead of the market's noise, you are affirming the merchant's wisdom. You may wonder whether you are ready for this kind of trade. The truth is, readiness is not a feeling that arrives fully formed. It is built by small acts of alignment, choosing quiet over constant stimulation, choosing reflection over knee-jerk reaction, choosing depth over speed. With each choice, you prove to yourself that the treasure is worth more than the trinkets you once chased. Gradually, the merchant in you becomes less of a seeker and more of a guide. It doesn't disappear, its alertness remains, but its role shifts from searching outward to guarding what has been found within. The restless scanning of the market is replaced by a steadier gaze, one that knows where to look and how to nurture what it values. The field lies before you still, but now you are here with a clearer sense of why you came. You are no longer wandering without direction. You are following the pull of something you have glimpsed and recognized as your own. And in that recognition, the merchant within begins to work alongside you, steering your steps toward a deeper understanding of the laws that shape this treasure's appearance. The law of mind is not an abstract doctrine to memorize, it is a living principle woven into every moment of your experience. Simply put, it says that what you consistently hold in thought and feeling patterns the field of your life. Like seeds placed in fertile soil, the ideas you nurture will inevitably grow into form. This is not punishment or reward. It is the quiet, dependable unfolding of cause and effect in the realm of consciousness. You may have already noticed hints of this in your own life. Think of a time when you carried worry with you for days. You saw signs of trouble everywhere, even in harmless events. Or recall a period when you were deeply inspired by a project. You began to see connections, resources, and opportunities you might have missed before. The outer world did not suddenly change overnight. It was your awareness that shifted, and the field reflected it back to you. In the field of pearls, this law takes on a new clarity. The soil here does not judge what you plant. It does not say, these seeds are worthy, these are not. It simply responds, hold resentment in your heart, and the field will offer experiences that mirror that bitterness. Hold a genuine sense of peace, and the field will align to support it. The process is impersonal, yet profoundly personal in its impact. Understanding this is both liberating and sobering. Liberating because it means you are not at the mercy of random chance. Sobering because it calls for responsibility in how you tend your inner garden. You can no longer pretend that your inner life is disconnected from your outer circumstances. The two are bound together, root and branch. The merchant within you, having recognized the value of the pearl, now turns its attention to this law. It begins to see that every thought, every emotional tone, is a kind of currency. Some forms of currency strengthen your connection to the treasure, others erode it. The merchant learns to spend wisely, investing awareness in ideas that uplift and sustain, withdrawing it from those that deplete and distort. This does not mean forcing yourself into a false cheerfulness or denying the presence of pain. It means choosing the orientation from which you meet each experience. Even in difficulty, you can plant seeds of patience, courage, and compassion. These too will take root and yield their own kind of harvest. The law is not concerned with perfection. It responds faithfully to whatever is most consistently sown. You begin to experiment with this, not as a mental trick, but as a way of life. When irritation arises, you pause just long enough to remember the field. You ask yourself, is this a seed I want to see multiplied? If the answer is no, you gently redirect your attention not in denial, but in deliberate choice. This is how the law is worked, through steady, mindful participation. As days pass, you notice subtle shifts. Situations that once provoked you now pass with less disturbance. People respond to you differently, though you have made no conscious effort to change them. The environment begins to echo the qualities you have been cultivating. It's as if the field itself has started to recognize the kind of seeds you prefer and is bringing forth more of them. This understanding also reveals why chasing outer conditions rarely brings lasting fulfillment. If you ignore the state of your inner field, you may achieve a goal only to feel its satisfaction evaporate quickly. The soil was never prepared to sustain it. But when the inner field is tended first, outer results grow in harmony with your deeper needs. The pearl of consciousness remains steady, and the forms around you become expressions of that steadiness. Living by the law of mind is not about micromanaging every thought. It is about cultivating a dominant atmosphere within you, one of clarity, kindness, and truth, so that even when passing clouds of doubt or fear appear, they do not disrupt the overall climate. This atmosphere becomes the fertile ground in which the pearl's radiance is most easily revealed. As you embody this, the field becomes more than a metaphor. You can feel it responding under your steps, adapting to the quality of presence you bring. The merchant within watches with approval, knowing that the choices you make here will determine not just what you find in this field, but how you live once you leave it. And without pause, your attention begins to move toward what must come next, preparing the soil so that nothing hinders the treasures from rising to the surface. Clearing the field is not a matter of bulldozing everything in sight. It is an act of care. Imagine standing in that expanse, knowing that pearls lie beneath, but also seeing the weeds, stones, and debris scattered across the surface. You would not simply plow through in haste. You would move with intention, understanding that the ground itself is precious. In the same way, the clearing of your inner field begins with a recognition. Nothing here is wasted, but not everything belongs in its current form. You start by noticing the clutter in consciousness. Some of it is obvious resentments that replay like a tired story, fears that whisper the same old warnings, judgments that rise before you've even taken a breath. Others are subtle assumptions you didn't realize you were carrying, quiet cynicism dressed up as realism, tiny dismissals of beauty before it has a chance to reach you. These are the weeds and stones. Left unchecked, they take up space where new growth could flourish. Clearing begins not with condemnation, but with gentle acknowledgement. You see the thought or feeling for what it is, without pretending it isn't there. This honesty is powerful, because it interrupts the automatic fusion between you and the clutter. When you can observe a resentment instead of being lost inside it, you have already loosened its grip. It is no longer rooted as deeply in your field. There is a discipline to this, though it is not the harsh discipline of self-punishment. It is the steady discipline of tending, returning again and again to lift out the stones, to pull up the weeds by their roots, rather than just trimming their tops. Sometimes this means stepping back from environments that continually sow more debris into your mind. Sometimes it means sitting still long enough to feel an old wound without letting it define you. Each act of clearing frees space for the pearl's light to reach the surface. This process can feel slow, and that slowness is part of its wisdom. If you rip away everything at once, you risk tearing up the fertile soil along with the weeds. But if you work steadily, you begin to notice that the ground becomes softer, more open. The same thoughts that once tangled around you now loosen and fall away with less effort. As the clutter thins, new qualities start to appear: patience, where impatience used to grow, openness where defensiveness took root, lightness where heaviness had settled in. You begin to feel a freshness in your own mind, like air moving through a room that has been closed for too long. This freshness is not something you imported from outside. It was waiting beneath the clutter all along. Clearing the field is also about sound. There is a noise to mental clutter, a constant hum of unfinished arguments, of imagined futures, of rehearsed conversations. As you release these, the silence that emerges is not empty. It is full. It is the kind of silence where you can hear your own heart clearly, where subtle intuitions have space to rise. At times, you may be tempted to think the work is done because the surface looks tidy. But clearing is not only about what is visible, it is about the roots. Some old patterns lie deep, surfacing only when triggered by certain events. When they appear, they are not signs of failure. They are invitations to dig deeper, to remove what has been hiding below. You may also find that the very act of clearing becomes a joy. What once felt like a chore becomes a kind of devotion, a way of honoring the field that holds your treasure. Each stone removed, each weed pulled, is an act of trust that the pearls are worth the effort. The ground responds, becoming more responsive to your touch, more willing to yield its gifts. And as this responsiveness grows, you begin to see a direct connection between the clarity of the field and the ease with which the pearl is revealed. It's not that you are creating the pearl, you are simply removing what has kept it hidden. The work is less about building something new and more about allowing what is already perfect to shine through. Without announcing it, your attention shifts again. The field is clearer now, and you can see farther across it. Shapes in the distance begin to catch your eye, glimmers that suggest something of real worth is near. This is the moment when you turn your gaze toward the question of value itself, and what it means to truly recognize the treasure when it appears. Recognizing real value is a skill that matures with attention. In the market of the outer world, value is often measured by rarity, price, or the ability to impress others. But in the field of pearls, the measure is entirely different. Here, value is defined by what deepens your sense of peace, strengthens your integrity, and aligns you more closely with the life that breathes through you. Anything that erodes those qualities, no matter how dazzling, has no lasting worth. You begin to notice how easily the mind can be dazzled by surface shine. It is possible to mistake noise for significance, busyness for purpose, or praise for love. Many of the things you once thought essential have lost their hold on you, not because they are inherently wrong, but because they no longer feed the roots of your being. They may still hold charm for others, but you feel the subtle difference between what entertains the senses and what nourishes the soul. This discernment does not make you dismissive, it makes you precise. You are not rejecting the outer world, you are learning to see through it. A conversation that once felt important because of who was speaking may now seem hollow if it lacks authenticity. A possession that once promised happiness now feels like an anchor if it adds weight without meaning. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. Emmet Fox often pointed to the idea that truth carries its own evidence. When you encounter something real, you don't have to be convinced. A quiet recognition rises from within, the way a tuning fork vibrates in harmony with a note. That resonance is how you know you are in the presence of genuine value. It is not accompanied by the anxious urgency of buy now or lose forever, but by a sense of rightness that needs no justification. The field teaches you this by feel. When you come across an object in the soil that is merely a stone, There is a certain dullness to it. It may be smooth, it may catch the light briefly, but it does not glow from within. A true pearl, on the other hand, has a radiance that is unmistakable, even if it is still coated in earth. It invites you to look closer, to treat it with care, to honor the possibility it holds. Recognizing value also means acknowledging that some treasures may not look impressive to others. A moment of genuine forgiveness, for instance, might not make headlines. A habit of daily stillness might seem unremarkable from the outside, yet in the currency of the field of pearls, these are of immeasurable worth. They change the texture of your inner life, and through that, they transform how you meet the world. You may find that your priorities begin to reorder themselves. Activities that once filled your schedule because they looked productive now give way to fewer, more essential actions that feel aligned. Relationships shift too. Some deepen because they share this resonance, while others quietly fade when the connection was built only on surface exchange. This reordering is not forced. It happens naturally as you become more attuned to what truly sustains you. With this clarity, you stop bargaining with yourself. You no longer trade your inner peace for fleeting approval or compromise your integrity for short-term gain. The cost is too high and the return too small. The pearl has shown you its worth, and anything that would require you to set it aside is instantly recognized as a false bargain. There is freedom in this. You move through the outer world without needing it to validate your worth. You can appreciate beauty, enjoy success, and connect with others without mistaking any of these for the source of your value. The pearl is the source, and it travels with you. This frees you to engage fully without the fear of losing yourself in the process. As you live in this awareness, the field seems to open in new ways. You no longer wander looking for something, anything of worth. You know what you are seeking and can recognize it on sight. This readiness leads naturally to the next stage, not just finding the treasure, but claiming it fully, with the whole of your heart. Buying the field is not a financial act, it is a wholehearted decision to live from the treasure you have found. In the imagery of the parable, the merchant sells all to purchase the land where the pearl lies hidden. In your own journey, this means gathering your scattered attention, reclaiming your energy from distractions, and investing it entirely in what you now know to be of real worth. It is not about possession, it is about commitment. Until this point, you may have walked through the field as an explorer, testing the soil, studying the glimmers, and weighing what they mean. Now, the time for hesitation passes. You understand that the field is not something you can visit occasionally and expect the treasure to remain close at hand. The pearl is revealed most fully to the one who belongs to the field, who has chosen it as the center of life, not a side interest. This decision begins quietly. You notice the ways your attention has been divided, how often you've tried to hold on to the pearl while also clutching the noise and clutter of the market. There is a moment of honesty. Both cannot occupy the same space in your heart. You see that if you want the clarity, peace, and depth of the pearl to grow, you must make room for it not in theory, but in the living structure of your days. Selling all, in this sense, is not about loss, it is about release. You begin letting go of habits that drain you, of commitments that pull you away from what matters most, of beliefs that keep you tied to lesser treasures. Some of these releases feel light and easy, others tug at old attachments. But each time you lay something down, you feel the ground beneath your feet grow more solid. There is a deep relief in this simplification. Without the constant tug of competing priorities, your mind clears. The energy you once spent on maintaining appearances, juggling half-hearted obligations, or chasing after quick rewards is now freed for the cultivation of the pearl. This focus does not make your life narrower, it makes it deeper. What remains is richer because it is aligned. Buying the field also means accepting its full reality. You inherit not only the smooth paths and sunny patches, but also the rough terrain and the shaded corners. Some parts of the field may still hold stones to clear or weeds to pull. Owning the field means you take responsibility for these, not with resentment, but with the understanding that they are part of the same ground that holds the treasure. You may encounter voices inside or outside that question this choice. They may suggest that keeping a foot in the market is safer, that total commitment is unnecessary. But you have felt the difference between a life split in two and a life gathered into one direction. The field is not a gamble, it is the surest thing you've ever known. As you make this choice tangible, you begin to reorganize your life around it. Your time reflects your values more accurately. Your environment shifts to support the clarity you seek, removing what distracts, adding what steadies. Even your inner speech changes. You speak to yourself with more truth and less judgment, because you are no longer negotiating with what you know to be false. This wholehearted investment also changes how you move through the outer world. You are no longer looking for the pearl in every passing encounter, hoping to be surprised by its sudden appearance. You carry the certainty that it is already yours, and that certainty shapes the way you work, relate, and create. The outer world becomes a place to express the treasure, not to search for it. In making the field your own, you cross a quiet threshold. The search has shifted from if to how, from wondering whether the treasure exists to exploring how fully you can live in its light. And as this commitment settles into the rhythm of your days, you naturally turn toward the question of practice. What steady actions will keep the pearl clear and present amid the flow of ordinary life? Practices of still clarity are not elaborate rituals reserved for rare moments. They are the steady rhythms that keep the pearl visible in the midst of daily life. They work not by adding noise to the mind, but by allowing what is already luminous to shine without obstruction. These practices are not escapes from life. They are ways of being fully present in it, without being pulled into its turbulence. You begin with the simplest act, pausing. In a world that trains you to rush from one demand to the next, choosing to pause is revolutionary. It is not about delaying action for the sake of delay, but about giving yourself enough space to see clearly before moving. This space allows you to respond rather than react, to notice whether your next step will keep the pearl in view or bury it under distraction. Breath becomes a quiet ally in this process. You don't need to force it into a pattern, simply noticing it has a way of steadying the mind. A single conscious breath, felt from start to finish, can clear more mental clutter than a dozen hurried resolutions. In that moment, you are anchored in the present, where the pearl always resides. Another practice is deliberate attention. Rather than letting awareness scatter across every sound, sight, and thought that passes, you choose where to place it. You might focus fully on the sound of rain, on the texture of a word you are speaking, or on the warmth of a cup in your hands. These moments of wholehearted attention are not trivial. They are training the mind to remain with what is real, rather than wandering endlessly through imagined pasts and futures. Reflection also plays its part. At the end of a day, you might simply ask, what kept the pearl visible today? The answer may be a moment of kindness, a decision made from calm rather than fear, or a truth spoken gently. This reflection is not for judgment but for recognition, reinforcing the choices that keep your inner clarity strong. Stillness is not always about literal silence or inactivity. It can be present in movement, in conversation, in work. It is the unshaken center that does not lose itself in the swirl of events. You may find it while walking through a crowded street, feeling each step meet the ground. You may find it in listening to someone speak, allowing their words to reach you without rushing to form your reply. The form does not matter. The quality of presence does. Over time, these practices weave themselves into the fabric of your life. They stop feeling like things you do and start becoming ways you are. This is the point where clarity becomes self-sustaining. You no longer need to retreat to a special place to find it. The field travels with you. There will still be days when the pearl seems dim, when the weight of worry or fatigue clouds your vision, but your practices give you a way back. You know how to pause, how to breathe, how to center your attention. These are not escape hatches. They are doorways back into the room where the treasure sits, unchanged. What you begin to notice is that the pearl's light, once it is steady within you, starts to reach beyond you. The calm you cultivate becomes a refuge for others without you trying to make it so. People may feel lighter after speaking with you, not because you solved their problems, but because your presence reminded them of their own depth. This is how still clarity moves in the world it doesn't preach, it radiates. Living with these practices is like walking through the field with a steady lamp in hand. No matter the weather, no matter the shifting of light and shadow, the lamp remains lit. It guides your steps, reveals the path, and makes the beauty of the field visible, even in its quiet corners. And as you continue walking, the glow ahead begins to shift from a private light to emerging with something greater, the source from which the pearl itself draws its radiance. Union with the source is not an achievement you can force. It is the natural outcome of a mind and heart that have grown clear enough to recognize what has always been present. The pearl's light, for all its beauty, is not self-generated. It reflects the radiance of the source itself, the infinite life that thinks, moves, and sustains you. When you live in still clarity, you begin to feel this connection not as a belief you repeat, but as a living fact that breathes through every moment. It often begins subtly. You notice that when thought quiets, there is not a void, but a fullness, a presence that needs no introduction. It is as if the edges between you and it soften. The distinction between the observer and the observed, between seeker and sought, begins to dissolve. You are not losing yourself. You are finding the larger self, in which your smaller identity has always rested. This union is intimate yet boundless. It knows you completely, every contradiction and uncertainty, and yet there is no judgment in it. In its gaze, the flaws you once tried to hide are simply seen as aspects of the human journey. Its acceptance is not passive, it is transformative. To be held in this awareness is to feel the possibility of living without fear, because you realize you have never been separate from the source that sustains you. The law of mind, which you have been learning to work with, now takes on deeper meaning. You see that the mind in this law is not merely your personal thought stream, it is the greater mind that holds all thought. Your individual consciousness is like a window in a vast house. When the glass is clear, the light of the house streams through. When it is clouded, the light seems dimmed, not because the source has changed, but because the view is obstructed. Union brings a shift in motivation. You no longer seek the pearl solely for your own enrichment. You begin to see that its light was never meant to be hoarded. It is the nature of the source to express, to pour itself into life without depletion. The more you live in this awareness, the more naturally you find yourself giving, not from a sense of obligation, but because the flow is too great to contain. Daily life becomes an extension of this union. Work, conversation, and even small acts like preparing a meal or walking down the street are infused with the same quiet sense of connection. You start to notice how often beauty appears without your planning, how the exact words you needed arrive unbidden, how the right person crosses your path at the right time, how a moment of silence suddenly feels full of guidance. This is not coincidence. It is the natural rhythm of living in alignment with the source. Obstacles, when they arise, are met differently now. Instead of seeing them as interruptions, you view them as part of the unfolding. They may still challenge you, but the fear of being undone by them fades. You feel the underlying current holding you steady, the way a river carries a leaf around a rock without the leaf needing to know how. There is also a humility in this union. You understand that while you participate in the work of clearing, tending, and recognizing the pearl, the radiance itself is a gift. You cannot take credit for the sunlight, only for the care with which you open the window to let it in. And with that humility comes a deeper trust. The knowing that even when the sky seems overcast, the light is still there, waiting for the clouds to part. As you stand in this awareness, the field around you takes on a new dimension. It is no longer just the setting of your search, it is an expression of the same source you feel within. Each blade of grass, each ripple of air, each distant bird call is part of the same life that breathes in you. The boundaries between inner and outer dissolve into a single, seamless whole. And from this whole, your steps naturally begin to turn toward a new realization, that even the obstacles and shadows in the field can be used not as barriers, but as material for refining the pearl's brilliance. When you live in steady contact with the source, you begin to see that the very things you once wished to avoid, the doubts, the fears, the uncomfortable emotions, can become part of the refining process. The obstacles are not here to diminish the pearl, they are here to help it shine more clearly. Just as grit in an oyster becomes the catalyst for forming a pearl, the challenges in your life can serve as catalysts for deepening awareness if you meet them in the right way. This shift in perspective changes how you approach difficulty. Instead of resisting it at the first sign, you pause and ask what it is revealing. Fear, for instance, might show you where you are still placing security in something fragile. Doubt might point to an area of belief that has never been fully examined. Craving might highlight a place where you are still seeking fulfillment outside the field. These insights are not punishments, they are opportunities for transformation. To work with obstacles in this way requires a certain steadiness. You must be willing to stay with the discomfort long enough to see beneath its surface. This does not mean indulging in it or letting it define you. It means holding it in the same light of awareness that you bring to the pearl itself. In that light, the rawness of the experience begins to soften, and its hidden wisdom comes into view. There is a kind of alchemy in this process. What begins as a hard, unyielding lump of resistance can, under the steady pressure of awareness, become smooth and luminous. The qualities that emerge, patience, courage, compassion, are not artificially constructed. They are drawn out from the depth of your being by the very challenges that seemed at first to threaten your peace. In practical terms, this means meeting a moment of anger with the same clarity you would bring to a moment of joy. Anger becomes a signal, telling you that something feels violated or unseen. Instead of letting it flare outward destructively, you trace it inward, asking what it reveals about your values, your boundaries, or your hidden expectations. The act of tracing transforms the heat into understanding, and understanding into action that reflects the pearl's wisdom rather than obscuring it. Even loss can take on new meaning in this light. When something precious is taken away, the initial emptiness can feel overwhelming. But if you sit with that emptiness without rushing to fill it, you may discover that it is spacious rather than barren. In that space, the constant background noise of wanting is quieted, and you can hear the deeper voice of the source more clearly. The loss becomes a doorway into a level of connection you might not have reached otherwise. There is no guarantee that this process will feel pleasant. Refinement often involves friction, but in the field of pearls, friction is not the enemy, it is part of the shaping. Just as the pearl's surface becomes smoother with time and movement, your own awareness becomes more polished through each honest encounter with life's difficulties. What emerges is not a brittle perfection, but a resilient clarity, one that can meet both pain and joy without losing its center. It is worth noting that this alchemy depends on your participation. Left unattended, obstacles can harden into fixed patterns that obscure the pearl entirely. But when you bring them into the light of consciousness, they begin to change. This is why avoiding or denying difficulty can be more damaging than the difficulty itself. It deprives you of the chance to transform it. You might start to notice that the field itself seems to respond differently when you meet obstacles in this way. Where before a challenge might have felt like a wall, it now feels more like a bend in the path. The terrain is still uneven, but you can sense that it leads somewhere meaningful. Even in moments of uncertainty, there is a quiet confidence that you are still moving toward the heart of the field. This perspective also softens your view of others. You see that they too are working with their own grit, their own rough edges. Instead of reacting only to the surface of their behavior, you begin to wonder what is being refined within them. This does not excuse harm, but it does open the possibility of responding with empathy rather than reflexive judgment. In this way, the alchemy of obstacles extends beyond your own life, subtly shaping the field you share with others. As you continue walking, the connection between challenge and refinement becomes so clear that you no longer dread the arrival of difficult moments. You may not welcome them eagerly, but you meet them with a readiness to learn. This readiness becomes another facet of the pearl, one that catches the light differently, less about personal peace, more about the strength to remain open when it would be easier to close. From here, the path through the field feels broader, not because the terrain has changed, but because your relationship with it has. You move with the understanding that every step, whether over smooth ground or rough, is part of the same journey. The obstacles have not disappeared, but they have lost their power to make you forget why you are here. And with this steady openness, your attention begins to turn naturally toward the way the treasure, once refined, begins to circulate, not hoarded for yourself, but shared in a way that enriches the entire field. Compassion as currency is a truth you begin to live rather than merely understand. In the field of pearls, value is not measured by accumulation, but by circulation. The pearl's light cannot be dimmed by giving it away. In fact, it grows brighter the more it is shared. Compassion becomes the natural medium of exchange, not pity, not condescension, but the clear recognition of shared humanity that flows effortlessly from a mind joined to the source. This kind of compassion is not sentimental. It does not rely on mood or convenience. It is rooted in the understanding that every person you meet is walking their own field, carrying their own mixture of soil, stones, weeds, and hidden pearls. When you remember your own moments of being lost in the market or tangled in the undergrowth, you begin to see others with softer eyes. The clarity you have found does not make you superior. It makes you more available to help. In practical terms, compassion might look like patience when impatience would be easier. It might mean choosing to listen fully to someone without rushing to fix their problem, allowing them the dignity of their own process. It can be as simple as offering a genuine acknowledgement to a stranger, or as profound as forgiving someone who has wronged you not because you excuse the harm, but because you will not let resentment bury the pearl. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not a transaction with the other person. It is an act of freedom within yourself. It clears the field of a stone that would otherwise block the flow of life. You release the weight not because the other deserves it, but because you deserve to walk unburdened. This kind of release has ripple effects beyond what you can see. Just as a single cleared space in the field lets more light through, a single act of forgiveness can shift the atmosphere for everyone it touches. Generosity flows from the same root. When you are anchored in the pearl, giving no longer feels like a depletion. Whether it is time, resources, or energy, what you share is replenished from the same source that sustains you. There is a quiet confidence that you cannot run out of what truly matters. Even small gestures, an encouraging word, a helping hand carry the same essence as grand acts because they are infused with sincerity. Living this way changes the nature of your interactions. You are less focused on what you can extract from each encounter and more attuned to what you can contribute. Strangely, this does not lead to loss. It draws richer connections, deeper trust, and unexpected support. The field responds to generosity by multiplying it, just as fertile soil responds to seeds by giving back more than was planted. It also becomes clear that compassion is not only for others, it must include yourself. The same patience and understanding you extend outward need to be directed inward when you stumble or fall short. Harsh self-judgment hardens the soil. Self-compassion keeps it receptive. This is not indulgence. It is the recognition that the pearl shines more clearly in a field that is cared for, not punished. Compassion has its boundaries too. It is not about letting harm continue unchecked or draining yourself to exhaustion. Just as healthy soil requires both rain and sun, compassion is balanced with discernment. You can care deeply without taking on burdens that are not yours to carry. In this balance, your giving remains sustainable and your presence remains steady. Over time, compassion begins to shape the texture of the field itself. Conversations carry less tension, gestures of kindness feel more natural, and even moments of disagreement seem to find resolution without the sharp edges they once held. It's not that you have scripted these changes, they arise from the atmosphere you now inhabit. The pearl's light refracts quietly through the way you speak, listen, and act, turning ordinary exchanges into spaces where understanding can take root. And as you keep moving through the field, that same light meets the flow of many other lives, each with their own terrain, their own treasures, and their own steps to take alongside yours. Walking among crowds while carrying the pearl is not about retreating into a private inner world. It is about moving through the shared field with the same clarity you've cultivated in solitude. The field is never empty. There are always other seekers, passers-by, and wanderers, each with their own pace and direction. Some are aware of the treasure beneath their feet. Others move without noticing it at all. Your task is not to judge them, nor to lecture them, but to remain centered so that your presence remains an anchor rather than a ripple lost in the noise. The first challenge is the pull of the collective current. Groups tend to generate a kind of momentum, a shared mood, a shared pace that can sweep you along if you are not attentive. In a market square, the sound of bargaining and movement can draw your senses outward, scattering attention. In the crowd of modern life, the equivalent might be the constant chatter of news, the pulse of social media, the collective urgency around things that do not truly matter. Walking with the pearl means you remain aware of this current without being carried by it. You move with it when it serves the journey, and you step aside when it doesn't. You notice how often the energy of others seeps into your own field. A conversation can leave you heavy or light, depending on the tone it carries. The discipline here is to remain receptive without becoming porous, allowing yourself to understand and even feel what others are experiencing, but not to the point of losing the clarity you've worked to maintain. This requires a subtle form of boundary. You stand close enough to connect, but far enough inward to keep the pearl from being clouded. Sometimes this balance is tested in direct ways. A conflict may arise in your presence, or someone may challenge your choices, perhaps misunderstanding your priorities, or even mocking them. Without the pearl, such moments can trigger defensiveness or withdrawal. With it, you see these interactions as part of the shared field, another patch of soil where compassion and clarity can be planted. You respond not to prove yourself, but to keep the ground fertile for understanding. There is also the challenge of speed. Crowds move quickly, and the unspoken expectation is that you match their pace. But the pearl has taught you a different rhythm, one that values depth over haste. You learn to let others pass without feeling left behind. Sometimes, by slowing down, you notice details others miss. A gesture of kindness between strangers, a moment of beauty in the light falling across a wall, a subtle shift in the tone of a conversation that signals openness. These are not distractions. They are signs that the field is alive and responding. The presence of the crowd also offers opportunities that solitude does not. Each interaction becomes a chance to test and strengthen the steadiness you have cultivated. You find that clarity is not something fragile to be protected from others, but something that grows stronger when shared in real conditions. A brief exchange with a shopkeeper, a few moments of genuine attention to a colleague, a wordless acknowledgement of a stranger's struggle. Each of these can be a pearl given and received at the same time. You begin to see that walking among crowds is not separate from the spiritual journey. It is the arena in which the journey is lived. The field is not a private garden tucked away from the world. It stretches through every street, every meeting, every shared moment. The work you do in clearing, tending, and recognizing the treasure is not just for your own benefit. It affects the ground others walk on too. There will be times when the density of the crowd makes the pearl feel distant. Noise, conflict, or sheer busyness can blur your connection to it. In those moments, you return to the same practices that sustained you in solitude, pausing, breathing, focusing attention. Sometimes it's as simple as feeling your feet on the ground as you move, reminding yourself that the field beneath is the same, whether crowded or empty. Walking this way also invites a new humility. You recognize that everyone is carrying something unseen, burdens, hopes, losses, or unspoken joys. The crowd is not an obstacle to your path. It is the context in which the pearl's light can have its quiet influence. You may never see the full effect of your steadiness on others, but you trust that the light you carry does its work invisibly, just as the sunlight nourishes the field without fanfare. And as you move, you notice that some people seem to sense something in you. They may not name it, but they respond differently, speaking more openly, softening their tone, lingering for another moment in conversation. It is not about drawing attention to yourself. It is about letting the pearl's presence be felt without needing to advertise it. The authenticity of this connection makes each exchange part of the same continuous walk, each moment threaded back to the source from which the pearl shines. Gradually, walking among the crowds becomes less about maintaining separation from them and more about walking with them while holding the center. You are not untouched by the world, you are engaged with it, but from a place that does not depend on it for stability. You know how to navigate without losing sight of the field's depth, even when the path curves through noisy or unpredictable terrain. This is not detachment in the sense of indifference. It is engagement without entanglement, compassion without collapse, presence without the need to control outcomes. You walk, and the pearl walks with you, not as an ornament but as the very lens through which you see the shared ground. And so, step by step, the act of moving through the crowd becomes indistinguishable from the act of tending the field itself. Every person you pass, every voice you hear, every choice you make along the way is part of the same unfolding. From here, the movement toward action that arises naturally from clarity feels like the next step in the same uninterrupted journey. Creative action flows most naturally when it is not forced. By the time you have walked the field with steadiness, tended it with care, and carried the pearl through both solitude and crowds, action no longer arises from pressure or the need to prove yourself. It comes as an extension of the clarity you hold within. Like water finding its path downhill, your movement into the world follows the contours of your true nature, guided by the same source that formed the pearl. This kind of action feels different from striving. Striving is fueled by the belief that you must create value to become valuable. Creative flow, in contrast, springs from the recognition that you already hold the treasure, you are simply letting it express itself. This is why the results of such action often feel lighter, yet more impactful. You are not pushing against resistance. You are following the grain of the wood, working with the shape of what already wants to emerge. The expression of the pearl's light can take many forms. For some, it might appear as art, music, or words that carry a certain resonance. For others, it could be problem-solving, building something that serves a need, or quietly mentoring someone who is finding their way. Whatever form it takes, the essence is the same. What you do outwardly is aligned with the inner clarity you've cultivated. There is no disconnect between the source and the expression. You begin to notice that the quality of your attention determines the quality of your action. When you move from the restless need for recognition, even the most skillful work can feel thin or unsatisfying. But when you act from the steadiness of the pearl, even small gestures carry weight and meaning. Writing a simple note of encouragement, repairing something broken, or offering a perspective in a meeting can have an influence far beyond what you can measure. Creative flow is also self-sustaining in a way that forced effort is not. Instead of exhausting you, it often leaves you with more energy than you began with. There is a feedback loop here. The more you act in alignment with the pearl, the clearer it becomes. The clearer it becomes, the more naturally your actions follow its lead. This is why such flow is not dependent on ideal conditions. Even in times of uncertainty or challenge, there is always some form of action that feels right and possible. You learn to trust this rhythm, even when the path is not fully visible. Sometimes the action is immediate and obvious. Other times it begins with a single step whose destination is unknown. What matters is not the certainty of outcome, but the integrity of the movement itself. You take the step because it aligns, because it feels like the pearl's way of shaping the world through you. This trust in action also transforms your relationship with results. You still care about effectiveness, but you are no longer bound to the idea that every effort must yield a specific outcome. You understand that some seeds you plant will take root in places you never see. The field extends far beyond your personal view, and the pearl's influence is not limited to the spaces you can monitor. There is also an ease with adaptation. When you are not acting from ego's need to control, you can adjust your course without losing momentum. If something isn't working, you can let it go without the weight of failure. If an unexpected opportunity appears, you can embrace it without fear of abandoning the plan. The creative flow remains constant, even as its channels shift. In walking this way, you begin to notice how much of the world's beauty has been shaped by people moving from this kind of clarity, artists whose work carries timeless truth, leaders whose choices were guided by integrity rather than expedience, quiet figures whose influence can be felt long after they are gone. They, too, were carrying their own pearls, letting the light move through them into the shared field. Your own creative action becomes part of this larger story, even if its scale seems small. Each act of alignment sends ripples outward, joining with countless others to create patterns of change that are not always visible but are deeply real. You begin to see yourself less as the sole creator and more as a participant in the field's ongoing shaping, a shaping that is both ancient and unfolding in this very moment. From here, the question is no longer whether you will act, but how you will sustain the conditions that make such action possible. That leads naturally into the next phase, learning how to guard the pearl so that its light remains clear and strong no matter what pressures arise around you. Guarding the pearl is not about building walls around it. It is about creating the conditions in which its light can remain steady. Once you have experienced the clarity and alignment it brings, you begin to realize how easily it can be clouded, not by some external force intent on stealing it, but by the small, persistent habits of distraction, exhaustion, and neglect that creep in over time. Protecting the pearl is less about defense against attack and more about care in the ordinary flow of days. One of the first ways you learn to guard it is through boundaries. Boundaries are not acts of isolation. They are the structure that allows life to flourish. Just as a garden fence keeps the soil from being trampled, boundaries keep your attention from being scattered into commitments that drain you. You begin to say no to what doesn't align, not from coldness, but from the understanding that every yes you give to the wrong thing diminishes your ability to say yes to the right one. Guarding the pearl also means tending to your physical and emotional energy. The field of your consciousness is not separate from the body that carries it. Fatigue, poor nourishment, or constant stress can make it harder to keep the pearl in view. You learn to recognize the early signs of depletion and to respond with rest, replenishment, or stillness before the light dims too far. This is not self-indulgence, it is maintenance of the vessel that allows the pearl to be expressed. Attention hygiene becomes another key. You notice what kinds of inputs leave the field feeling bright and open, and which leave it dull or agitated. This may mean limiting exposure to voices or media that thrive on fear, outrage, or shallow distraction. It may also mean deliberately seeking out environments, conversations, and materials that lift your perspective and deepen your sense of connection to the source. The point is not to shut out the world, but to choose the streams that feed clarity rather than cloud it. There is a subtler form of guarding, to the recovery of the pearl after it has been momentarily obscured. No matter how mindful you are, there will be times when the light feels lost under the weight of stress, conflict, or self-doubt. The key is not to panic or to condemn yourself, but to know the simple steps back. Pause, breathe, remember. Even a small act, recalling a moment of gratitude, touching something that grounds you, stepping into a patch of sunlight, can begin to clear the view again. You also learn that guarding the pearl requires vigilance against subtle erosion. Unlike dramatic loss, erosion is gradual, often going unnoticed until clarity is significantly reduced. It might come in the form of overextending yourself to meet expectations, letting old habits of resentment resurface, or ignoring the quiet signals that you need renewal. Vigilance here does not mean living in tension. It means living with awareness, regularly checking the state of the field so you can tend to it before small issues take root. Guarding is not done in isolation from others. In fact, part of protecting the pearl is choosing companions who honor its presence in you, even if they do not name it in the same way. These are the people who leave you more centered after time together, whose honesty and kindness help keep your inner ground healthy. You, in turn, serve as a guardian for their clarity when they need it, creating a mutual exchange that strengthens both fields. Sometimes guarding means stepping back from the crowd to reconnect with your own center. This is not withdrawal. It is the rhythm of engagement and renewal. Just as a pearl is formed over time in the stillness of its shell, your own clarity sometimes needs quiet to regain its full radiance. You return to the simple practices, pausing, breathing, deliberate attention, that have always brought you back to the heart of the field. As you live with this vigilance, you realize that guarding the pearl is not a burden but a joy. It is the privilege of caring for something of immeasurable value, something that enriches not only your life, but every life you touch. The more consistently you guard it, the more resilient it becomes, and the more naturally it shines without effort. And in that steady glow, another truth begins to emerge. Perhaps the pearl is not something you carry within the field at all. Perhaps it is the field, the soil, the light, the air, the life, all of it part of the same whole you have been walking, tending, and protecting all along. This realization does not feel like an ending. It feels like the most natural continuation of everything that has come before. Becoming the field is the quiet culmination of all the steps you have taken. Up until now, it may have seemed that you were a separate figure moving through the landscape, someone who tended the soil, searched for the pearls, guarded the treasure. But as you keep walking, a subtle shift occurs. The division between you and it dissolves. You realize that the awareness in which the pearl shines is the same awareness in which the field exists. They are not two. This recognition does not arrive with fanfare. It slips in almost unnoticed, the way dawn light fills a room without you marking the exact moment. You begin to sense that the clarity you sought was never a distant object to acquire, but the very ground of your being from the start. The digging, clearing, and tending were never about adding something foreign. They were about allowing yourself to notice what has always been present. In this state, the old idea of holding on to the pearl becomes unnecessary. You no longer fear losing it, because you understand you cannot be apart from what you are. The pearl is not an object in your possession, it is the radiance of the field itself, and you are that field. Every step you take, every breath you draw, is a movement within your own expanse. Living as the field changes the way you meet life. Obstacles are no longer foreign intrusions, They are shifts in terrain that belong to the same whole. Joy and sorrow, gain and loss, solitude and companionship, all are part of the landscape. Nothing needs to be exiled for you to remain whole. The clarity you carry is not fragile. It is as vast and resilient as the field itself. This realization also transforms your relationship to time. You no longer feel as though the present moment is merely a stepping stone to a better one. Every moment is the field. There is no "when I find the pearl" or "when I am ready." You are already here. The work continues, but it is no longer driven by the feeling of lack. Instead, it is animated by the joy of tending something you know to be infinite. Your actions take on a new ease. You still plant seeds, clear stones, and walk among others, but you do so without the undercurrent of striving. You act because it is natural to express the life of the field, not because you are trying to secure its worth. This ease is not laziness, it is the efficiency of alignment, the way a river moves with purpose without having to force its flow. From here, compassion deepens into something even quieter, a simple recognition of yourself in all things. When you see someone struggling, you no longer think of them as another you are helping. You see a part of the same field, a place where light has yet to fully break through. Your help becomes less about doing for and more about being with, offering presence, understanding, and space for their own pearl to shine. There is also a freedom from the need to constantly measure progress. You know that some seasons will feel lush and abundant, others bare and stark. Both are part of the same cycle, and neither threatens the truth of what you are. The pearl does not vanish in winter. It rests in the soil, waiting for the warmth to bring it forward again. This understanding brings a quiet confidence. You can step into the market, walk through the busiest streets, sit in silence, or face moments of uncertainty without feeling you've left the field. The boundaries that once felt so firm between sacred and ordinary, inner and outer, seeker and sought, have dissolved. Life is of one piece, and you are woven into all of it. And so the journey that began with a step into unfamiliar ground ends not with a destination reached, but with a home remembered. You have not found the field of pearls. You have remembered that you are the field, and the pearls are simply the ways your own light catches and reflects the source. Every act of care, every moment of clarity, every choice made from alignment is another facet of that light. There is nothing left to hold on to, because nothing can be lost. The treasure is not ahead or behind, it is here, as it has always been, as you have always been, and from this place, the walk continues, not towards something, but as something, the living field, radiant and whole, in which every step is already the treasure itself. The path through the field of pearls is not a straight line, but a circle that brings you back to where you began, only now with new eyes. You arrived searching for something rare and precious, and you discovered it not buried deep in some unreachable corner, but woven into every moment of awareness. The field was never outside you, and the pearl was never separate from your own being. This realization does not make life static, it makes it fuller. Challenges will still arise, seasons will still change, and the pace of the world will still ebb and flow, but now you meet it all with the steadiness of one who knows the ground they stand on is unshakable. You are no longer chasing peace, you are living from it. You are no longer searching for meaning, you are expressing it with each step. Let this knowing settle into your body, into your breath. Feel how much lighter life becomes when you are not constantly reaching for what you already hold. The pearl's light is not something you have to protect with fear, it is something you nurture with care, attention, and love. And the more you allow it to shine, the more it illuminates not just your path, but the paths of those around you. As the journey continues, remember that every conversation, every task, every quiet moment is part of the same field. You don't have to wait for special conditions to live in alignment. The conditions are always here, in this moment, in this step. The field is yours, the pearl is yours, because you are both. And in that unity, you walk on steady, open, and whole, knowing the treasure is not just in your hands, but in your very being.